No, it's a yeah. It's a yeah right now.
Oh yeah?
I'm big yeah energy.
Another
This
dimension.
is Anderson's. Once a month I get to talk to my friend Michael Swain.
That's it. That's the only time we talk.
I'm Abe Epperson.
I'm Michael Swain.
And we have a show called Anderson's.
And we say more sophisticated, smarter things than it might seem like from this intro.
Hey, we talk about the Andersons. That's right, Paul Thomas Anderson and Wes Anderson, who are only really put together because of their last name. Once again, we're dummies.
Right. Well, and then next season, of course, we'll be doing all the Pamela Anderson shit, which is a whole nother ball of boobs.
Yeah, I mean, Paul W.S. Anderson is left out of this conversation.
The Underworld guy, yeah.
No, it's not the Underworld guy.
No? What is he, Mortal Kombat?
He's like Mortal Kombat, yeah. He's Resident Evil.
Oh, that's his main deal is Resident Evil, I'm recalling that now.
Yeah.
Anyway.
He's a cut-up. Yeah. But today we're talking 2017's Phantom Thread.
The point is, if your last name is Anderson, send us in anything on video and we're legally obliged to cover it.
We have to.
Yeah, the Phantom Thread 2017, famously featuring Daniel Day-Lewis, who's hard to get in a movie, but not if you're Paul Thomas Anderson. Vicky Creeps, I hope I'm saying that right, but she's the other main character, so she deserves to be named. And Leslie Manville is Cyril, the sister. It could be a play, dude. That's like it. It's them plus some.
I mean, for bigger roles, yeah, it's basically those three.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So on this show, we begin with a lens and looking at it through that. And that lens is called diegesis. Diegesis means what happened in the movie. I mean, you could argue about that's a slant definition, but this is where we synopsize the movie in an entertaining fashion before dispensing our deeper thoughts. Hell, I do this all the time. I love podcasts, Abe less so, but I listen to podcasts of shit that I'm medium about seeing, and I will cave and be like, my experience of this piece of art will just be listening to the podcast synopsis. That's good enough. I don't need to go all the way to see this thing. But I did watch Phantom Thread, as I'm sure Abe did. And it starts with a woman named Alma seemingly being interviewed, or at least having a conversation with someone off camera about him. Like, it's clear that they're circling the same, like some kind of figure who's not there anymore. And she says, I gave him every piece of me. And we cut to Daniel Day-Lewis shaving, trimming his nose and ear hairs, putting on foundation. We go, oh, he's very fastidious. There's like nice piano music. Yeah,
he's a man who shaves and puts on pants, right? He's just a man. He's not a god.
True. He puts on his pants one leg at a time, and we see it happen. Right. His name is Mr. Reynolds Woodcock, which
Woodcock
tidbit. Daniel Day-Lewis said to PTA, I think it would be funny if his name was Reynolds Woodcock, and PTA was like, you got it, buddy. You're the boss, Mr. Lewis. Yeah. So he really does. He's going for the joke. Woodcock. It's pretty dumb.
It's all right.
But that doesn't speak to the tone of the film. The film is very highfalutin. He's a fine tailor working in the old London town. And he is also a very fastidious man about everything around him. So that's the next element that's introduced. Basically,
his work.
Yeah, his work is everything, and everything must be subsumed to that. So his wife offers him a treat, and he's like, I told you I can't have these treats. They're too starchy, which is funny because clothes have starch. And he says, she's like, okay, sorry. I didn't mean to give you the wrong treat. But she has like a little tone or something. And he goes, can we please not have a confrontation? I do not have time for a confrontation this morning. I'm delivering a dress, so I just can't have a confrontation. Which is basically the equivalent of saying, I win the confrontation. Like, it's just shutting you down. I win. And there's this third woman there, and you're like, I was like, who is that for a while? You're unclear on, but she's his age, and you're like, maybe his sister. Turns out to be his sister.
And she takes care of the business.
Yeah.
Basically shields him from anything that distracts from his work. of
including
making
like glad handing with
dresses.
the clients, except when they're literally trying the stuff on.
Oh yeah. And his clients see him as a genius, and they're always satisfied because he's charming and obsessive, and he's tyrannical and a little bit cruel.
He's got like that. He'll even be rude to the rich and famous clientele, and they find that charming, right? It's like the fool, the jester. So the lady comes in, she tries the dress. We see her at her grand ball. She loves it. That really just establishes like it worked. She loves the dress. It's great. Satisfied with himself, he has dinner with his sister Cyril. And she says, without him saying anything, but it's almost just like a cue from his face. So your current girlfriend, i.e. the woman that you yelled at about the confrontation.
Joanna. Yeah.
She bugs me. She's getting fat and sad. I'll just give her a free dress and tell her not to be at home when we get home. Is that what you want? And he just like nods. Like he doesn't want to do the dirty work, but yes, dump my girlfriend for me.
Yeah. And Cyril is like, I mean, this pays for the house. You gotta be undistracted.
And of course, he wouldn't be a fastidious London tailor if he wasn't a mama's boy. So he sets up a thread that will go throughout the film. Ooh. I see Mama in my dreams. I have a restless feeling I can't put my finger on. I hope she saw my dress tonight. Oh, Mama.
Uppies.
Yeah, uppies, Mama. Uppies straight to heaven, Mama. She suggests that he take a trip to his country house to relax. Cut to him doing that. He likes to drive fast in his little car.
What does this guy do to relax, really?
Drives fast in his little car and goes to the... Well, he dominates women, right? That's what he does, is he captures
That's what he does.
Women,
That's right. I just think about him... You want to take
over with the hotel? Restaurant?
Yeah, I just think about him before he goes to this like small little quaint hotel on the countryside, on the seaside, where he meets Alma, who's a waitress there, and he flirts with her, and he's infatuated with her, and she's infatuated with him. He orders an insane amount of food.
That seems to be how he's spitting game, which maybe we'll talk about it in the next segment, but I just want to flag, I don't understand. Like he orders more and more and more food, and that makes her hotter and hotter.
That's how I do it. Yeah. She writes it down, and I think this is an interesting, like, here's the setup, opening images. I'm a big fan of those. And we started with a framing device. This is the interview with Alma. This is her introduction into his life. And she's writing down all the food that he's, doing. And as a memento, he takes that from her. And he's like, can you remember my order? Which feels like a test. It feels like, are you an idiot? He's
literally testing her, and their relationship dynamic is, you serve me.
You serve me. Yeah. And she's like, I can remember. I'm a good little worker. And she is infatuated with him because he's a fancy, strong, handsome man.
Famous, fancy man. About town.
Yes. And they have dinner. And he, as you mentioned, drives very fast. And he removes her lipstick. And he says, I like to see who I'm talking to. He has a fascination, again, with his mother. And he mentions this to her on the first date. Once again, how I do it. And he's like, what's your mother all about? And as they're talking about mothers, as he do, he mentions that she's here in the canvas, which is what he calls, I don't know,
his jacket.
His jacket, the canvas. And he tells her that Alma should carry her mom's photo around everywhere. That's an important thing that you should do.
Basically orders her.
And it's unclear if it's for me. Like, is it so that at any point he's like, hey, show me that photo of your mother? Or is it just to be like, this is
everyone
something
should cherish
do.
Their
Everyone
mother.
should,
yeah.
Exactly. Because he never wants to be without mommy. And he says he never married because it would make him deceitful to make dresses, which I think is an interesting little psychology there. We'll get into later.
His dressmaking. And did you say he keeps a lock of his mom's hair in his jacket?
Yes. That's how he keeps mommy around. And he makes a fairly logical argument that that expectation by others when she's like, she's basically like, what is all this? She's sussing out like what is going on here, basically, is her big question. And he's like, expectation by others is what makes heartache. In other words, I think he's saying, hey, look, I'm atypical and you should be down with that. And she's down with that. And so he fits her for a dress.
Now you're going to have a bad time.
It's going to be weird.
It's going to be upsetting.
Which is, you know, I think that could be cute, right?
Sure.
Then they're
to a
freak
certain
matches.
kind of woman who's interested
I
in freak,
don't think that's what this movie is about. It's about phantoms and whatnot. But yeah. He fits her for a dress, takes her measurements. His sister comes in and smells her. It's a great opening
Smells
move.
her like a predator.
Yeah, I'm sniffing you out. And then she takes the measurements. It's all very erotic with, you know, his sister there and everything. It's very cool. At one point, he says that there's just some dialogue I wanted to point out. You have no breasts. And then Alma goes, I know. And then he goes, no, you're perfect. It's my job to give you some. If I wish to.
I decide who has boobs.
It's just so funny how if you say it, if you take away all the pageantry, the fact that it's Daniel Day-Lewis, all these, you know, P.T. Anderson, the script really reads like a horror rom-com.
Well, it's just
like
catty
it's a comedy.
bitches. Yeah, because then after he's like, I have to step out for a moment. And Cyril's like, you have the ideal shape. Oh, I do? Yeah, he likes him a little fat. You're like, okay, all right.
He likes
bitch.
a little belly.
He likes him with a little belly.
Which
Come
is
on,
just
dude.
hilarious, just as a dunk, but also like, thanks. You know, like that's all.
Yeah.
Like Elma's going through it right now. And their relationship kind of blossoms. He tells her, like, they start seeing each other. He tells her that he's been waiting for her all his life, it feels like. And she says that the same. And they go out to dinners and she's wearing these new dresses that look amazing. There's new clients lining up. In the relationship, there's nothing sexual initially. It's just a personal work relationship, it feels like. And
it's just like she's
personal.
his main model. She actually works
It's a muse,
ton.
yeah. Yeah, she works a ton and she inspires him, and that's how it starts. And then Alma starts to fight back because she doesn't like that she is basically just adorned in this house. Like she's just placed like part of the furniture, and she's kind of rebels by saying, I don't like this fabric in one particular dress. And he accuses her of having no taste.
Or I transcribed this bit. Yeah.
Yes, please.
It's the first time she's ever done anything but completely be subservient to him, and he fucking loses it. I don't like this fabric. Well, that fabric this is Cyril, actually, his sister. That fabric is adored by our clients. It's perfect for this dress. Cyril is right. Mm-hmm. Cyril is always right. But she is not right because it is adored by our clients, but because it is right. Because it's beautiful. Perhaps someday you will change your taste, Alma. Well, perhaps I like my own taste. Maybe you have no taste. Maybe stop. Like he just cuts her off. Stop.
Yeah, I don't. Do not speak?
You do not speak to me in this way. Yeah.
It is the 50s after all.
Always primacy dominance for him.
Right. But this is juxtaposed with
they find
them going out and having a great time, and sex gets thrown in the mix. We don't see it, but he pulls her into his room at one point.
Well, and he says, because this comes up multiple times, he says, she's like, have you had enough to eat? You look hungry. And then they bone. His appetite, his sexual appetite is always mirroring.
Eating is
physical.
Always. And ain't it always the case, Michael? That's when the problems
hungry
start.
And horny, baby.
Yeah, because she's loud at breakfast.
Well, that was the problem is every time in puberty, like I think a lot of young men, I jerked off a lot, like multiple times a day. And I'd have to be eating at the same time because you're always horny and hungry. And it's like, shoving a hot dog down while you're jerking off.
You're jerking off, and it's like you accidentally put your dick in your mouth.
In the bun,
like,
and then now you're addicted to a new thing and you feel weird.
I didn't think this would happen. It's... So at breakfast, she's just eating normally. He says it is entirely too much movement at breakfast.
It's as if you've ridden a horse across the room, Alma. And she's like, I was putting butter on toast.
I guess I was loud a little bit, but like, you're being fussy. I don't like that you're being weird right now, and he doesn't like that. He leaves. So we see that the fissure has already been created. And then, once again, juxtaposed with this is an amazing montage. Photos are taken. It's all very pretty. The dresses are dope as fuck.
Fans even come up and ask for autographs. That's how famous he is as a dressmaker.
Yeah, and he's always distant. And I love there's one interaction where it's like they have a candid, like, oh, let's get the dress designer in there and like take photos with him. And he's like, am I done? I have to get to work, because he's got to make these fucking dresses, Swaim. Mm-hmm. After a show, he gets depressed, because that's what little boy Fauntleroy does. And Alma acts as his mother, offering, maybe I'll drive, and strokes his hair, and he relaxes. And this apparently happens a lot as we cut back to the framing device.
He has like an artistic letdown thing.
Yeah, once he has a big, kind of creation time.
And she said it only lasts a few days. And it's the only time he's fucking nice to her. So she likes it. Yeah.
She likes it. And in the framing device, in the interview, she says, he's like a baby, a spoiled little baby. And that's basically
very tender,
right.
Very open.
Yeah. And that's what she likes. He wants a mommy, and she likes being mommy.
I can fix him.
That's their freak. That's when things get a little bit contentious, even more so than they were. Alma finds some poison mushrooms, and we get the arrival of
I gotta quote their fight. I brought you tea. I didn't ask for tea. Take it out.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm taking it out. It's a little late for tea, isn't it? I'm taking it out. Yes, but it's a little late for tea, isn't it? I'm going out. Yes, the tea is going, but the distraction's staying right in here with me.
It's so fucking. It's perfect. He's
I'm
such a
immediately
little boy.
doing what you told me to, and you're still mad. Yeah.
Yeah. We get the arrival of Barbara Rose, who's an older, very rich client who's, I think,
Groucho
an
Marx
investor.
would destroy this lady. That's what she looks like.
That's exactly what Groucho Marx wants.
Bro.
Yeah. And her insecurity is just very loud, and it gets in the way of the work, because she's like, I'm not as pretty as your other girls. And Reynolds is just like, man, I just want to make these fucking dresses. And we kind of flash forward to when it's for her wedding. She's getting married again, because she's like a socialite, and she's gotten married a bunch of times apparently, and always in high society. And there's a back and forth about how he doesn't like to. He's just behind the scenes dressmaker. He doesn't want to go to weddings. He doesn't want to be in the high society. So he doesn't want to go to the wedding, but he relents because she literally pays for the house. And at the wedding, Barbara Rose gets too drunk, like way too drunk. She passes out.
Also, just because we'll pass it and I won't mention it again, probably.
Yeah.
I do think it's an interesting note that she's so rich that they have a press conference, right? Reporters want to write about her daughter getting married, or her getting married, or whatever. And they shut the interview down because the reporter is like, didn't it just get revealed that you made all your money selling visas to Jews fleeing the Nazis, like exploiting and leeching off of rich Jews, paying your way to get? And she's like, this interview's over. And then she gets drunk. So I think that's part of it. Yeah, she feels
I think it's that 1950s flourish, baby. But she's clearly unhappy. And she says one of the reasons that like this handsome, guy is marrying her is that she's very sincere. And I think that that's an important word that we get, for Alma later. But clearly at her wedding, something's happening behind the scenes. That sincerity is not really working. She's clearly unhappy and too drunk. And of course, Alma and Reynolds, who are at the wedding, get angry about how she's not dignified enough to wear the dress. Like, getting drunk and being a lech in my dress. It's that, like, clutching the pearls that's happening.
It's like wearing a Picasso and fucking a hedgehog in the gutter.
So they take the dress from her while she sleeps, which is like a really bold thing to do. Alma in particular is vengeful. She's like, the House of Woodcock would not allow this.
House of Woodcock. It's like if you heard our Safe House episode of Frame Rate, the thing when he goes, I'll get the fucking mail myself, and then he calls Stuart and goes, can you please get the mail? It's the exact same vibe. I love at the door he says to like the servant of the sleeping lady, go and take it off her and bring it to me right away, or I'll fucking do it myself. No? Alma, do it. And she goes and does it on his behalf.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like he never does shit himself except make dresses. His precious little Lord Fauntleroy hands must be reserved for dressmaking.
That's right. And this gets him hot.
Oh, he loves
the dress. Yeah, because Alma is like her little zealot.
That he's a genius, right?
Yeah, and so they kiss and they're having a lover's moment, and Alma professes her love, which we don't see Reynolds reciprocate, right? Like they cut away after she's like, and you say I love you back,
he's like,
maybe? He's like,
I sure like making dresses.
I love dresses. And though she is happy the next morning, which is, that's a little ruffle, I think. I thought it was interesting that she's like super happy, but then immediately the beat is that she becomes sad because he's cold again. So I think that
kind of jealous because he's making a dress for a princess who's beautiful and looks like
a fancy, pretty French member of the royal family.
And when Her Highness thinks of her one and only wedding dress, what does she imagine? I imagine it's the most beautiful dress in the world. Like, great, helpful note. I'll do that. You fucking moron. You inbred.
And I love that you can see why he works for high society, right? Because he knows how to deal with he's like,
shit like
or
that.
Maybe it's the only dress that's ever been made.
Maybe it's the only dress that's ever existed. Like, which means nothing. It's just what she wants to hear.
I just love one guy in the middle of Phantom Thread.
And she's like, well,
that can't be possible. You guys are crazy.
Wait a minute. There's like 4 dresses in this room. I'm confused.
This is weird. You guys are weird. So one of the things that happens during this French member of the royal family's arrival, she wants a wedding dress, and also he's worked with her for a long time. She's very beautiful, considered perhaps even at one point kind of a muse, except that she's in the royal family, so that would not, be something that he could get away with. But he's done a lot of dresses for her. And there's an accidental slight that happens when she arrives where she doesn't greet Alma. She mistakes her for I guess the generic help. I guess the idea is that you come in and you shake the hand of everyone who will be actually working on your dress. And then
but not like the seamstresses.
Assistants.
There's like assistants who just sew stuff and you don't have time to shake all their hands. Yeah.
And presumably because Alma is so I guess plain looking, or I don't know, she's dressed
she's fucking beautiful, but
she's fucking beautiful. But I think the implication here is that she's in the back row and she's not wearing she's not the official seamstress, so she's not really wearing the digs. And also I think there is supposed to be, an allusion to that, Woodcock has this fascination obviously with his mother, and his mother is also a woman who's beautiful, but I think in what the movie's trying to say is she's not they're not classic beauties or something. It's
interesting that we see his mother, and there's in a vision when he's sick, and there's 2 things that are really interesting about her. We'll unpack more, but just to note, she's very intentionally cast as someone that a movie would consider plain looking. I'm sure people know what I mean. In movie land, by those standards, you can tell he intentionally is going for a plain looking woman.
And it goes along with the comment about the belly, he likes a little belly.
Also, she's super young. He remembers her as her 17-year-old self, which is kind of creepy to me.
That's kind of weird, but I guess it's the photo that he has still or whatever.
It's the photo of her on her wedding day.
Yeah. I mean, it's all mommy dearest stuff. So
mommy.
But back to kind of this French member of the royal family, which I think is important because we kind of see how Alma deals with this slight, right? Because she's slighted. Alma feels the need to assert herself, and she does this very weird thing that I'm sure the French lady would be like, okay, what was that? Which is Alma walks over to her and she says like, introduces herself to the woman as like, I live here. And she's like, okay, cool. Like, all right. Is that it? Is that all you wanted to say? Which is all she wanted to say. She is a part of this tribe. She is a higher up and she wants to feel it because that's the problem. Reynolds doesn't make her feel like she's inside. Cyril doesn't make her feel like she's just this passing ghost.
And she knows his pattern. She's like, she starts to be more and more like, when are you going to get tired of me and kick me out because of some kind of slight and fuck some other girl?
This moves her to be like, I want to surprise him with a dinner. I want to do something to kind of make my mark on this relationship. And she brings it to Cyril, which is an interesting kind of like, she knows to do this because Cyril like handles the business. Yeah. It would mean that if I made a dinner for just him and like all the help would go. So I have to, I guess, talk to Cyril to say, send everyone home. And Cyril's like, no surprises. You like immediately locks her out. Like, I don't want like super cold. I don't want, you shouldn't do that. He will hate it. And she's like, well, I want to, like, show love the way I want to show love in my own way. So she sends everyone home and Cyril relents because what's she going to do? And she makes him dinner and he hates it.
Okay. Yeah. I got to read some dialogue here. First of all, he gets home and everything. She's like, do you want a drink? Do you want some food? And he's like, no, thanks. It's a long day at work. Like he's broadcasting, I wish you didn't do this. And he calls her dress interesting instead of good or pretty.
Which is like he critiques her dress.
Like, right.
He's dunking on it. Yeah.
And she goes, I'm sorry. This was meant to be a nice evening. Let me serve you. And she gives him the asparagus and he like stares at her while he puts an insane amount of salt on it. And he dips it in the butter and he bites it and makes like an ew face, like a fucking child. And she says, do you like it? And he goes, I do. And she goes, oh, you don't like it. You usually tell me if you like it. Well, I like my asparagus with salt and oil. And yet, presumably knowing this, you serve it to me unsalted with butter. Under certain circumstances, I might be able to pretend I like it. But right now, I'm just marveling at my own gallantry for even eating it the way you've prepared it.
Which is so, I love it.
That is, you're done. And later in the scene, when he's like, are you a secret agent sent to ruin my life? Do you have a gun? Show me your gun. I'm like, I really hope she beats him to death with a fucking bowling pin like the end of There Will Be Blood right now.
It would be so funny if she's just like, here's my fucking gun. Yeah. She just has a gun.
She has, I'm finished. Calls Cyril.
Yeah, calls Cyril. Fuck you. Yeah, it's pretty contentious.
You, steals all his shit. Leave. Burns the dresses.
Yeah.
She says it's impossible living with you, and he says, then fuck off back where you came from. And you're like, oh no.
Oh, and she leaves after that. You want to keep going? I love when you keep going.
So this is the last straw, but instead of leaving the abusive relationship, she just becomes even more fully enmeshed. And she's like, oh, all right. I'm going to come back at you, dude. So as was pretty clearly telegraphed by the scenes where she's foraging for mushroom for his mushroom tea. And they're like, make sure you don't get the poison ones that look exactly like the regular ones.
You don't want that.
So now we see her foraging and she's like, and then we cut to
maybe a poison I shall have. Yeah.
Then they cut to breakfast. It's just him and Cyril because she's started taking her breakfast elsewhere and like eating it really carefully and quietly, which is funny to see.
So sad.
She's like carefully biting the toast.
Yes.
And Cyril's like, does the thing we saw her do before, but humorously, she's like, do you want me to cut her loose? Because if you're going to cut her loose, we should just cut her loose because I'm actually starting to really like her. And you're like, oh, that's funny because she would never show that. And he goes like, oh, well, if you're fond with her, I guess I'll just have to stay with her for the rest of my life or whatever. And she asserts her dominance. Don't pick a fight with me. You wouldn't come out alive. And he like averts his eyes like a wounded puppy.
I love how hard Cyril goes. Cyril always immediately takes it up to 11. Like, I will fucking shit in your heart.
Right. Because she doesn't say one thing. She says 4 things. Don't pick a fight with me. You won't come out alive. I'll go right through you. You'll be the one on the floor. Understood? He's like, yes.
He's like,
mother.
Yes, mommy.
Yes, dear. So he's in the middle of telling his staff that the dress they made is ugly and they butchered it when he collapses and has to go vomit. And Alma has a great time fussing over him. And I think anyone who's with it understands that she can interpolate that she poisoned him so that she can, because she misses the way he is when he's sick because he's nicer.
Yeah, she's Stockholming him.
Yeah, so Cyril or Munchausen or whichever by proxy or whatever it is. Cyril comes in and comforts him. And Alma's like, no, you don't comfort him. And she's like, well, the doctor will take it from here. Come on, let's go, Alma. And Alma just like leads her to the door and shuts the door. She's like, I have claimed him. When he is sick, that is our time. He is mine.
Yeah.
So Alma cares for him and he's really sweet and loving to her. Until after several days, Cyril demands that she let a real doctor look at him. And incidentally, we realize that this doctor is the person that she's been talking to in the framing device. It hardly matters, but you're like, oh, it's that guy. So the doctor comes in and looks at him. But he's on Alma's side. He agrees. He hates doctors and tells the doctor to fuck off, and Alma backs him. So now it's he and Alma against the world, just the way she wants it. The doctor has to retreat defeated without doing any measurements or whatever. Meanwhile, the dress that he ruined by falling into it is due in Belgium in time for the wedding. So the staff are working overtime to get it in shape. Alma helps them. So she's bonding with the staff. She's bonding with him. The only person she has beef with is Cyril, who secretly likes her but won't admit that. She finds a little message that he left himself in the lining. That's how I interpreted it. Is that how you interpreted it? He left that message?
Yeah, he leaves the message.
Because he said he leaves himself little messages, right? So she finds the message he left in this dress, which says, never cursed. And I didn't get any meaning from that. Hopefully Abe will explain it to me in the next segment. In his sickbed, he sees the vision of his mother we mentioned. She's in her wedding dress. He says, I think about you all the time, Mama. I hear your voice say my name and I wake up and there are tears streaming down my face. I'm a pussy, Mama. He watches Alma come in and pass through the space until there's like a balanced shot where they are the same size, filling the same space. Get it? She's like his mom. Feeling vulnerable, he tells Alma he loves her more than anything. He wants to be with her forever. There are things I can't do without you to keep my sour heart from choking, to break a curse. A house that doesn't change is a dead house. Will you marry me, Alma? Will you marry me? And she pauses a real long time and then says yes.
Reluctant. She knows like that.
She knows it's going to go bad. Yeah. Then on their fucking honeymoon, she pours tea too loud. And he just looks at her and you're like, they're fucked. It's already happened. It's already happened. And it moves that. There's basically this is a movement where she enjoys parties in high society and Reynolds just does not care for any of that shit because it's not the work. And so the relationship turns cold. And then because he resents her, he digs at her, which is what he just does to people. So like they're playing backgammon. And he's like, you're rolling the dice too loud. And then she rolls and is like, sorry. Okay, anyway, 5. And he's like, it was actually 4 and checkmate or the equivalent in backgammon. And she's like, oh, okay. And he's like, now vacate your seat because we're playing tournament style and someone else needs to sit here. She's like, wait, what? What is going on?
I mean, I think that was a joke. He was trying to be playful, but it's that like playful joke that you make when you've already soiled.
And then he goes, what? I was just joking. What? And then this bitch, who you're like, who the fuck are you, bitch? Yeah, sits in and goes, she's very rude, isn't she? My heart breaks for you. It's like you've married a child. And I don't want to be racist or anything, but is it like a custom of her people at this time of night to go upstairs? And what is she doing? You're like, the fuck are you, lady?
She's stealing things.
Haven't been in the movie. Yeah.
Gonna start a fight. It's fucking hilarious.
So Alma says, I want to go to the New Year's ball. He says, I'm going to stay home and work. She slams the door and goes to the ball. He feels lonely and distracted all night. He stares at the clock. He can't work. He finally goes to the ball himself. He arrives right at the stroke of midnight. He looks around the crowd. He feels upset and ashamed. He finally sees her dancing with some rando below. He's jealous. He fights his way through the crowd. He finds her. They just stare at each other for a long time. Like obviously he came here. He wants to say, please come home. I love you or whatever, but he can't say that because he's a monstrous prick. And she wants to say her piece, but she can't say that. So he just grabs her hand and they both leave.
It
Like they
drags
have
her
the
home.
conversation without having the conversation. Yeah.
Right. It's pretty cool.
He loses a big client and he flips out on Cyril about it in a way that I just have to quote because it's, again, the depths of childishness it's one of the landmark childlike moments of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
They said it wasn't chic. Chic? Fucking chic? Whoever invented that word should be drawn and fucking quartered. Chic. It's fucking chic. What's wrong with you? Well, it's hurt my feelings, Cyril. It concerns me because it's hurt my feelings. Stop moaning. I'm not. I just don't like to be turned away from. No one does. Just stop saying it because you're hurting my ears. Like Cyril's a real Captain Janeway, dude. She's like, the sound you're making with your mouth hurts my ears. Stop making it.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
Just make the dresses. I gotta get my paper.
And then in fucking sitcom fashion, Alma walks in behind him just as he's saying,
what?
It was a mistake marrying Alma. She fucking sucks. And now I can't cut her loose. Jeez, Cyril, can you dump her, like divorce her for me? Is there anything like that?
Basically, yeah.
And what's amazing, I think, about the scene, the great turn is you expect it to go the sitcom way because you're like, oh no, he's going to notice Alma's there and he's going to feel ashamed. And he doesn't feel ashamed at all.
I didn't mean it.
She goes, anyway, the client said she's okay with the dress. And he goes, I don't give a tinker's fucking curse about her satisfaction. Thank you, Alma. You may leave. And you're like, she heard you. And he's like, I know. I don't talking about care.
Her. Yeah. He's talking about all women. He doesn't give a shit about any women.
Yeah. And then he says, there is an air of quiet death in this house, Alma, and I do not like the way it smells. Even though literally he proposed by saying, you make this house change and feel alive, right? It's the opposite now. So guess who goes foraging for more mushrooms?
Because what? Hey, you do the shit. If
it ain't broke. So we see her be depressed for like a day, and then her be like, fuck it. And she goes to forage for mushrooms.
I'm making this fucker an omelet.
And the Johnny Greenwood score is definitely going out of its way to make you be like, is she going to kill him this time? So she serves him. She's like, becomes the perfect little housewife. And she wakes up and she's like, I made you a special breakfast so you could do your important work, honey. And it's like an echo.
Tons of butter.
The shots are an echo of when they first met. Like it's framed the same as the waitress scene, except that she intentionally pours his water really loud. And like when he makes a look at it, she does like a sassy look.
Dunking.
Yeah, she's like dunking / flirting. And she's like, here's your mushroom omelet. Eat it before it gets cold, dear. And he starts to eat it. And she just stares at him, smiling. And you're like, this motherfucker's dead.
And he knows. Like the way he's eating the omelet.
And then you see in his eyes that PTA has directed him to, there's a turn where you're like, oh, he knows, she knows, he knows. Yeah. And he eats it ravenously. And she goes,
like,
she says, I want you this way, helpless, vulnerable, with only me to help you. Then it's okay and you can be strong again. And you won't die. You just need to settle down a little. And he goes, kiss me, my girl, before I get sick. And they make out and then he runs away to throw up. And I'm just going to hit the dialogue I wrote because it's funny. He's on the toilet. Maybe you should call the doctor. I can if you wish, but if you trust me, I will make you well again. I trust you. I love you. I love you too. I love you so much. But I think you better leave now. Close the door behind you. Like he's about
to. I'm about to shit and vomit.
Yeah. So then it cuts to the doctor and she says, like, basically, we're going to keep doing this. This is our thing now. If he does die one day of it by accident, I don't even care because I know we're so in love that I'll see him in the afterlife. She's like, nothing can separate us. No matter what, in the future, I will be reunited with him through death, through sickness. We're as in love as people can be. And the doctor's like, okay. Like he just kind of accepts that he was there for her to talk to. And she's like, I am. And then there's a brief little montage where she imagines their future, their children, their friends, old age, they're dancing. And she's like, and I'll be old and I shall see things differently and finally understand him to his core. And I keep his dresses free of dust and ghosts and time. And then she travels through time. No, that's the end of the movie.
Yeah. Then she poisons him again.
When he was a baby.
They're happy.
Yeah.
They are happy. Yeah, it's kind of unclear. Like, I guess I've
or
seen
did he
people
die?
write.
Pete, I know that people are like, he is dead.
No. Well, I was like, it's unclear if. Like, it seems clear to a lot of people on the internet that last bit is possibly imagined because of her narration.
Yeah.
But I also can see it as the truth. Like, I think that's what.
Oh, like the movie is actually
PTA
flashing forward. This is what happens.
Yeah, I think that this movie is a testament to, like, and we can kind of, this is probably a better segue to just go to our next, spectra. Here.
Pedagogy. Boom, we're in it. Continue.
Boom, we're in it. Yeah, like just this idea of, it's kind of framing this horror rom-com, right? It's kind of like The Master. It's about like almost a cult leader in a fashion. I think PTA is pretty consistently made his main characters very loathsome, and that's
it's The Master meets Punch Drunk Love. It really is.
Right.
It's like a hybrid.
But it's also about, like, this movie in particular is about the avatar, like, we create for who we fall for. Like, it's not trying to lob and take down Reynolds Woodcock. That's not what this movie is. This movie is talking about how he is immensely flawed, and so is Alma, and they've kind of created an avatar of each other of who they fall for, of like, you will serve this purpose for me in life. And that's a lie that we all tell ourselves. So it ends up being about toxic children vying for acceptance, right? And I think that's why Alma, she is also a monster. She poisons him all the time. So that last bit, it may as well be their happiness. Like, I think that's the thing with PTA, is he's trying to say she's just like hook, line, and sinker, believes that will be her life. And that couldn't be farther from the truth. Like, it's just going to go back to business as normal. She's not going to have a bigger part of the dressmaking business. They're not going to be happy. We don't really know. It's just painting the rom-com. It's just painting the meet cute. I think he's making it intentionally unclear. Yeah, you mentioned the never curse thing.
Oh, yeah. Do you have a theory on that? Because I don't have anything.
I mean, it's less a theory, but it's just a callback to the story he tells her when they're like having their first date, right? He tells the story about how there's mainly the reason that we do wedding dresses as society, the way we do it, like the fact that you buy one before, your wedding, and you don't like buy one and keep it, or, which would make a ton of sense. Is because there's a crazy amount of superstitions involved in it. And almost all of them are that you'll be cursed to like have a bad life or a bad husband or whatever.
Or not find love.
So he's just putting in this part that he was, and this was told to him, a story told to him by his like nanny, basically, which I think is also it's just how society was back then, but in like the 30s, 20s or whatever. Like he had it so that like he wasn't even raised by his mom. He was raised by this wretched old woman, as he describes. Yeah. So it's like also a funny kind of like, he loves his mom because I'm pretty sure that they only saw each other when it was great. The raising actually was done by this other woman who he despised a little bit because she was ugly and she was very strict. And she probably gave him a lot of the, tendencies that he has now. The never cursed thing, I think, is just taking a piece of his own life and putting it in every dress that he does. So he is stamping he's just a guy who can't help himself. He has to stamp himself upon every woman he meets.
I did get that aside from the specific words, it's just on the theme of he hides secrets in his clothes, his yearning is in his clothes.
But I think the only depth there is just that he has this compulsion to dominate women, even in the slightest. I mean, he's literally dressing them, right?
Yeah. He's a tailor of people. Or, the low-hanging fruit stuff is in play. That is all intentionally true.
All postcards.
Did you think it's intentional that the dresses are all ugly? Like, I thought none of the dresses he make look good by modern standards.
Oh, really?
They're ugly,
by modern
stupid dresses.
Yeah, I mean, they're taken very, this is an insanely researched film, is what I found going down the rabbit hole.
Because I thought that could be a choice, which I would think is amazing.
No, I think that's just your taste. These are considered amazing dresses.
But I think that's an amazing takeaway, dude. Because
Yeah.
That's how stupid
bullshit.
fashion is and how stupid his pride is. Because it's like, you're so proud to the point that you'll be cruel to other human beings for this shit that it's so ephemeral. Like, it's like, it reminds me of when I would always get so mad when I see interviews with Bobby Fischer, who's famously super narcissistic and arrogant because he's good at chess. And I'm like, it finally occurred to me one day, that's meaningless, dude. Or like, he's right. Play tennis. He play skee ball, program a computer. It's like, you're just good at chess. Let's calm down. And with this dude, it's the same thing. You make good dresses. Let's relax. Anyway, I hated him.
I love when you go hard on fashion because I agree 100%. It's
when he wipes her lipstick off and says, "There you are." Mm-hmm. That is literally a viral story that Bradley Cooper did to Lady Gaga when they were filming whatever movie they're in together. And the whole takeaway of the story is that that's a really cringe thing for Bradley Cooper to have done. Wipe off a girl's makeup and go, "There you are." Who does that? It's not charming.
No, it's super sweaty and not real. It's like someone who is play acting at being a human, trying to have a human moment.
It's like if the soup Nazi was the star of a movie.
That's kind of what we're talking about here. That's why, like, going back to like The Master, that's why those interactions and those feelings of fraternity and brotherhood that happen in that movie, immensely awkward. You're supposed to feel awkward. Right. You're supposed to feel like this is not how it goes, man. Because they'll like roughhouse and you're like, no, I've never done
it too far.
That kind of roughhousing.
Yeah.
I guess boys will roughhouse or whatever. And in the same way in this, it's like, I guess this is love, they're doing all the romantic things. I mean, look at the backdrops, like it's like they're placeholders for things that are actually real, for like people respecting and honoring each other. It's like, that's when we think of our weddings, that Switzerland wedding is unreal. Like just the shots, like it is as beautiful as it gets. Like it's photographically amazing. And the houses they like inhabit throughout the film.
Yeah, they're elite.
Unreal. But it's like all hollow. I think that's what we're supposed to take away from that, right?
Well, I think it's the Swiss Army knife that is the title, which I'm sure is supposed to be at least 6 or 7 things, meaning like there's that really key line where he says, "I think it's comforting the thought that the dead watch over the living. I don't find it spooky at all." So it's like there's a phantom thread connecting you to your ancestors. There's the phantom thread of love that pulled these two people together, even though they're a horrible fit. There's the phantom thread is the idea that the threads he weaves will soon enough die and become phantom. There's like 9 phantom thread things. Yeah. Is cool.
Alma is a phantom thread because everything is buttoned up in his world and exact. And Alma is a loose end that refuses to go down.
Like a phantom limb. Yeah.
It's also perfect because it's an actual thing. A phantom thread is actually taken from historically ladies who worked in this era on these particular types of dresses would go home and find themselves asleep going through the motions of sewing.
Whoa.
And they would call it the phantom thread because they worked so hard.
So, and it's these people,
it's perfect title.
I mean, it's certainly about people, especially him, almost more flexible, who are stuck in their like his routine cannot be changed. He does what he does by rote. He gives a girl a dress to hit on her. He gives a girl a dress when he dumps her. Like he does everything the same. So that totally,
and it's also the reverberations, like you mentioned, of time through like how we're all connected. But like just the idea that he's just doing this mother replacement. Like he only sees women as a certain thing that he can find beloved. Otherwise, they're in the way of the work. That's why Cyril works.
Distraction,
that's why Alma works. And that's why in the end, because he kind of hates himself, he sees that he must change.
He's like, you know what? I do need to be put in my place now and then.
I kind of need to be poisoned. I'm a poisonous person.
I'm toxic. I may as well be poisoned once in a while.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, I think there's definitely resonance in her line to the doctor in the framing device, we'd go to bed at midnight and he'd make me work at 4. And I think that's what attracted him to me, is I could stand so long. No one can stand longer than me. And all you had to do is add the word it, right? Or him. No one can stand it longer than me. Like, that's her superpower, is that she can put up with this bullshit. And the climax of the film is the one moment where she questions that. Like, the emotional climax of the film is the dinner where she goes, can I stand this bullshit? Why am I in this? I should just leave you. And then she goes, no, I'll poison you and that will work for me. So like, the whole question before us, the movie is a will they, won't they? It's just an interesting one. And I love that. Yeah, that's her superpower that makes him a fit for him, is that only she can put up with his fucking bullshit.
Which is kind of a funny way to, like, now you kind of see how P.T. Anderson and company kind of like,
I was going to
see the world.
We're also deep enough in. This is the first movie, because with Wes, it was true 5 movies ago. This is the first movie where I kind of feel like I do understand PTA's formula and interests finally.
Yeah, definitely his interests and what he, like, who he wants to talk about and what he wants to say about most people.
Yeah.
He is definitely one of the filmmakers right now, which I think is a really, like, I aspire to do this kind of invasion of story as well, where it's like, I'm just trying to kind of showcase exactly like the grit of humanity, like how, like, sometimes when people are like this, it's all about the fallout and everyone, and it's all very dramatic, and we like to talk about how, like, terrible they are, but in the end they're just immensely human, and it's just sad fact about the human animal that we do this to ourselves.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Human, terrible. All right, you don't have to repeat yourself.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's very it's interesting film for him to make, especially because he's made all of his films about, like, the backdrop of Southern California at this point, and this one takes place in London, and it's shot all around Europe. And I think it's because he is trying to do that gothic romance, right? He's trying to do an update, a little bit of, like, 1940s Hollywood, definitely like that. You know, even more that was like the reemergence of, like, the gothic novel, right? That was like Jane Eyre and stuff like that, where even that tale has Rochester is, like, blinded or something, or maimed, I forget, but in Jane Eyre, like, that's what equalizes the power struggle, so that Jane is like, well, now we can marry because you're my little boy that I take care of, and only me, which is just a weird kind of system of how, I guess, at the time we saw essentially how that went. That was how relationships, I guess, went at that time.
I also want to mention just a couple good directing things, because he's still good at directing. Especially to soften the blow of my final rant that I'm going to do at the end of the episode. But the scene that we talked about where they have a fashion show and he watches, and it's like a big culmination of, you know, it's the end of a cycle of creation for him, and he gets depressed right after because of the release or whatever. In that scene, all the girls hold numbers, which I'm sure is historically accurate, so that the people watching can say, oh, I want to dress number 24. But it obviously doubles as a, like, they are just numbers. Like, they are nothing to him.
Oh, yeah.
And what I love doubly is the more subtle touch of, he watches the show from backstage through a peephole, and the shot we get is just the rainbow light through the prism hitting his eyes. So, like, what he wants to do, because, like, a rainbow literally on your eye is like you are seeing beauty. That's how I interpret that.
Right.
So it's like all he wants to do is be a secret perv looking at beautiful stuff, like
in the darkness.
Yeah, in the dark, just staring at beautiful shit. He values that more
he
than
makes
anything.
that you know, he like that. Yeah. It's a wild metaphor. And then it's wonderful too.
As we mentioned, just his ability to work with actors. They're both incredibly talented actors, so they can rise to the occasion. But the film, quite intentionally, has at least 2 pivotal plot/character turns that are dialogueless and are done only through eye contact and facial expressions. Obviously that's almost like oneer. It's like a director going, look what I did. Pretty good acting.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
it is.
It's
very
the
effective.
emphasis on the subtlety of, the two great performances as well.
And the script has to set things up in such a way that through context, you know what they're thinking.
You know what's happening.
So it's really a conspiration of all the elements.
Yeah, it's painterly in that way. I want to throw on top of that, look at height in this movie if you rewatch this movie, and stairwells in this movie. Something that PTA said in an interview is that he was like, I did want kind of to foster this feeling throughout the film, this kind of attitude that existed at this time and kind of still exists, which is like, I'll let you walk up the stairs to me. I'll greet you from above is the quote.
Right, yeah.
And it's just that, like, I think Anderson is like putting, he's doing that as a framing device as well. If you look at the height and everything.
Oh, dude,
like
in the scene where
power dynamics are almost always who's up top.
In the scene where she made dinner and he's coming home, he's really testy as he walks up the stairs. And then after he passes her, he's like, okay, I'm comfortable again. And is like, I'm going to go take a bath. Yeah, it's great.
And he doesn't like that she's above him. And she's
so he changes it.
Yeah, exactly. Which, of course, is, like meets with her whole deal. If you want to have a staring contest with me, you'll lose. And she's right about that. I'll poison the shit out of you.
And she wins that staring contest, right?
Yeah.
As foreshadowing.
Yeah, she does.
And like,
I mean, I guess they lose together.
The movie is
win together.
Obsessively working on that sort of symbolic mathematical level. Like, as the doctor leaves after he told him to fuck off, and Cyril and Alma are essentially vying for, when he's sick, who has jurisdiction. That's like the argument of the scene that's in the subtext. As the doctor leaves, he goes, so just do this and feed him this. And in unison, they both go, okay, will do, doctor. And they look at each other and he goes, all right, good night, Mrs. Woodcock. And because it's a sister and the wife, they both go, thanks. No, yeah, I'm Mrs. Woodcock. Like they just keep in unison vying for. It's so funny.
Exactly right. At that time, Alma they're not married, right? She's just woman.
Appropriating. She's just answering.
So she's just like,
I'm the lady of the house.
I'm a fucking, assume I'm the wife. Hell yeah. I love that.
I love that for me.
Yeah, exactly. I did want to talk about Barbara Rose a little bit because I found that's like
beautiful performance from the actress.
Oh, fucking great. And just a great little, like, this is how you do kind of encapsulated vignettes in movies.
I know you're trying your best, but I'm still just so ugly. Please be quiet. I'm trying to make a dress.
It's a beautiful little story, and it's also such a good parallel for Alma and this idea of being real at this time. Like, this film can really be seen as a look at how these women were clawing at expression and freedom during this time. The 60s has not happened yet. They're coming out of the 40s and the 50s. It's all the things that we think of when we think of the 50s, Stepford Wives and whatever. But just this idea of about being chained down in these cages, specifically built by men. This was something that happened when they researched this movie. And like P.T. Anderson talks about it a ton in interview. He's like, I was fascinated with this time because it wasn't just, this guy. He's an analog for like 80 guys. Like, they all had these essentially houses of women built around him.
Yeah, haute couture was everything. Yeah.
And they were these kings of fashion, and they built cages for women. These women were working for men who designed the fabrics that they wear, and they loved them. There was this feeling of reverence for it. And just the idea at this time in society where, like, Barbara Rose, Alma, the idea of acting out or acting his equal or out of expectation of high society was seen as uncouth and shameful. And harmful.
Decide what you wear, what looks good and what looks bad, but women make it for me, but I get all the money and credit. Pretty good. And I think good setup for him. He's got it made.
It's, and it's just as far as like, I know I said that this isn't really a takedown. Like, I don't see this movie as like a takedown of any particular person, but like, in terms of like reflecting against the ugliness of society, like the Barbara Rose stuff is fantastic because you don't even get the details as to why she's crying. You just believe, yep, that woman is going to be very unhappy. You can tell that she's having a conversation that no one is listening to.
Yeah.
And Alma's the only one who even has the capacity for like sympathy in a deep way. And she is like, fuck that bitch. You know,
Yeah.
like she is like horrible to her. She's like, I will take your dress from you. You don't deserve it. I deserve it. And it's just this idea of being real as being something that we build up as a, you know, like we have reverence for that itself in society. We say like, yeah, being real is something that we should do. The idea of making a movie where you're like, yeah, even that's false is awesome to me. Like that's a cool maneuver to say how false all these people are and how their expectations, once again, as Woodcock says, what creates heartache. It's not, you know, being weird or acting acting out. It's just people have expectations. And if you don't meet those expectations, you will feel heartache.
Attachment is the root of suffering, baby. Buddhist shit.
Yeah, baby. So that's pretty sweet.
Yeah. That's all I have except a little spiel I want to do. How
yeah,
about
hit me
you?
with the spiel, baby, and then we'll get to the how do you do that.
Well, I bet people it's what you assume it is, but I bet people probably couldn't tell up until I started referencing that I had something to say because I was so positive about the movie. And indeed, as with every episode, I hope the things we noticed made you like the movie in a more interesting, deeper way. If you like this movie,
yeah, you don't like this movie.
I don't like this movie. Yeah.
What don't you like about it?
Well, on Rotten Tomatoes, for example, it's got a 91 from critics and a 70 from audience, and I think that is about like I'd give it like a 65. And I think that that's telling. I think that this is too far up its own ass, designed for critics and film students to analyze the way we just did, which is funny because I like doing that. But there's a point at which like even I am like, and this is what I've heard leveled at this film, and I just have to agree. There's a point where it's just too white, toxic, male, pretentious. Who gives a shit about this guy? Follow any other character. This feels like it's just some schoolboy academic film school shit that we don't really need right now. It should be a takedown. And also, I want to compare it to two things. One, Punch Drunk Love. Because power dynamics are the way they are in society, the idea that a childlike man could match with an older woman who has this weird, awkward maternal thing works for me. But the idea that a toxic man in the Victorian era or whenever is going to abuse this woman, but it's okay, she likes it, doesn't work for me. I don't think PTA can tell that story. The power dynamics are the wrong direction. Like, especially if he's saying, and this is cute, they're in love at the end, which he is. It ends with him going, I'm hungry. And she smiles. And that's their love language. And I just didn't buy. I'm like, oh, so she makes him sick with the mushrooms. And that's cute. And we like that. That's a functional relationship. No. I don't buy that. This movie is not at the end, it seems like just a fantasy of like, if I was a old prick, I bet a young, beautiful woman would fall in love with me and put up with all my bullshit. And all I'd have to do is get sick once every 6 months. And then she'd do whatever I want all the rest of the time. That's love.
I don't think the movie's saying that at all.
No, but I do think it's saying in this unique situation, it works for them. And I'm saying, yeah, or that's such a weird thing to focus on.
I wouldn't even go so far to say it works for them as like that is like that is on the table. You're absolutely right, but I don't think the film is actually hard saying that.
It's definitely not a takedown. The movie is
saying, "Look at these freaks." Like that's what all the movie needs to say.
All I can say is Punch Drunk Love also said, "Look at these freaks, and now they're in love." And maybe I need to introspect even more. But all I can say is,
I think your take is
that movie
like valid,
makes me be
sure.
like, love is real and goodness exists in this world. And this movie makes me be like, don't go with him. He's a prick. I don't like that guy.
Yeah. I see that. Yeah. It's interesting because do you also feel that same way about The Master, or is it just because it's a romance?
And then, so The Master.
Because the Master is like very much
The Master is totally a portrait of a toxic guy controlling everyone around him. And again, I'd have to think more and like write an essay video about it. But I think The Master is a masterpiece up there with Brazil and shit. And I don't like this movie. So I actually have to think more about what are the differences. Because I agree, There Will Be Blood is also a portrait of a toxic guy who wins and just plows through everything and wins. And of course, I love that movie. All I can say is something about this one. Ironically, the Seams show.
It smells its own farts.
It smells its own farts too much. And I think in the trivia, Like also reading the trivia of the film made me feel that way even more, because also it's Daniel Day-Lewis being all method and insisting everyone call him Mr. Woodcock for the whole production. And it's, it's PTA hearing the name Woodcock and going, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard. Yeah, that's definitely the name. And I'm like, that's not that funny, dude. You guys are dorks. This is lame.
They are dorks. And he's always been a dork. That's the other thing. He's a real dork. Like P.T. Anderson has always been like, yeah, man, that's really funny, man.
But sometimes he's right. Like fucking the matches in John C. Reilly's pocket.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah. So it's just funny. Like he's on fire. It's like that's no fucking great. Or just the idea of John C. Reilly's character in Magnolia is just like fucking incredible. Hilarious. Yeah. Just losing his gun and being sad all the time. It's just a great cop. I think that there is something to be said about like it lines up with ours. Like what we like, this movie is a lot of shit that you and I in particular don't like,
care about.
Like fashion is bullshit to both of us.
Playing poker in a dusty saloon and riding your horses with spurs on. I'm like, even though it's not technically a Western, I'm in for the milieu.
You're in for it. Yeah. So I think there's something to be said about that. I think that that's very self-aware. I totally know what you're saying about smelling its own farts. And
do you like it though more than I just expressed?
I like it more than you do. I see it up there with The Master.
Oh, wow.
I do think that I think it's doing the same thing. I actually dock it points just because I feel like this is more of a comment on, I think, the trend of why do we make films like this, right? I think it's reflective of society. What do we hate that society is run by these white men who determine basically everything for us, so right? That's what the last 20 since Reagan.
But I think a big part of the last
forever.
A big part of the last diversification of voices in media in the last 15 years is the realization of that. There's a step beyond that. We don't even have to make the movie about that guy. Like
exactly. Yeah. And I think that's something getting tired. I think art gets tired a little bit. And I think this is him making a beautiful piece of art, P.T. Anderson, that is, and company.
It's still
making
very
a beautiful
good.
Piece of art that is, like maybe a little too late. That's not his fault. That's just society changing.
And I wouldn't he's just doing what's worked for him. Cause honestly, like it worked in No Country, it worked several other times. It worked in The Master. Right. Yeah. So no real shade. I don't think he sucks. I just found it gave me the ick at various
unpleasant
points.
Viewing experience.
But he's still an incredible craftsman, much like Reynolds Woodcock. Like, he puts together a nice dress.
Have you seen 40s films of this, like the Gothic Romance era, like Gaslight?
Oh no, did he nail, I'm assuming, the feel?
I mean, he's just doing Rebecca, right? Where the heroine finds herself in a mysteriously
Rebecca, but I have not seen much from this era, really.
Right. There was a whole genre about like with a woman feeling like she's crazy because these men are being straight up assholes all the time. That's a genre is because a question that I think from our perspective in 2024, we're looking at that and we're like, really? That's like a genre, like, like buddy cop. We're like, that doesn't need to exist. And we may be right about that.
At the time, because women were struggling to, right.
That was what was relevant at the time. And then, as you said, I think like, well said, like you're pointing out that like maybe we don't need that anymore.
Or fewer of them, like just tip the balance. We make 1 million movies. Yeah, you can have some.
It's interesting. This is a wider conversation about like, should we see films as when they were made, or shall we see films as we are,
or judge people, right? Like is racism just as toxic?
Right. But there's also something to be said about you adapt with the times. So I think that there's an argument for both. And I definitely think that we're in the trend right now where I would say that the latter is winning, or like that's just how people view films. And I think that that's fine. I think that that is honestly fine. I also can turn that off sometimes and be like, oh, I like to view this in the way that like someone in the 40s would view this,
Sure.
I think that there's value to both, but also sometimes it's very clear, like in the case of this movie,
you're sitting there, the female character comes in and you're like, she's worth less than me. I feel like I'm really embracing this 40s vibe.
Yes, I'm a filmmaker.
I could assault her and probably face very few legal repercussions. The 40s.
And yeah, I'm an artist, Swaim.
Yep.
I'm an artist.
What can I say? I'm a real artist. Anyone should be able to express any opinion they want unless Kyle Gass says something about killing the president, then shut it all down. Shut it all down, dude. Okay. Are you ready for Howdy Do Dat?
Howdy do
Howdy
that.
do that. It's pretty brief, but I thought there was some interesting behind the scenes shit.
I thought this is fascinating.
This is one that made me go, yeah, see, this is an eye roll from me, dog. Although, as I said, 65 is not, I'd give it a 70. Like, it's good. Paul Thomas Anderson says he got the initial idea for the film while he was sick in bed one day and his wife, Maya Rudolph, was tending to him and gave him a loving look that made him realize she had not looked at him quite so lovingly in a long time. So really the core observation is when I'm sick, my mommy take care of me. That's all. It comes across as that to me.
Yeah, that's right. It's funny because that's not only the only origin story of this movie too, because like that was happening
a whole press
and
circuit, right? So you say a bunch of shit.
Well, I mean, he said that shit because that's probably true, and that's like he wanted to make that about character wise. But Johnny Greenwood, who by the way is killing it in this movie, 90 minutes of score in the 2 hour and 10-minute movie, 90 minutes. That's insane. And he's worked with PTA forever since like There Will Be Blood and such, and he's credited with the initial inspiration, at least for the era of the movie, because he made a comment about, this is just so funny to me, just thinking about these artists just being like normal dudes like Johnny Greenwood. So PTA was like wearing a suit that was, I guess, fancy, and Johnny Greenwood was like, look at that fancy little suit wearing motherfucker. And he dropped the name of like a, I don't know, 50s, like what Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead would do. Like say a particular fashion icon from the 50s.
You look like so-and-so. A good reference
like so-and-so, something that I don't care to learn even the name of. But he said that, and P.T. Anderson was like, who the fuck is that? Yeah. I don't know who you're referencing. And so P.T. Anderson, as he said in like interviews, like basically went down a Wikipedia hole and just researched, which led him to this era's kings of fashion and how they operated, yada yada.
And that captivated so it's just funny his interest. Yeah,
it's kind of interesting.
People know that Daniel Day is hardcore, but just to get it out of the way, here's the hardcore shit from him on this one. He prepared for the film by watching a bunch of archival footage of 1940s and 50s fashion shows and movies. Totally makes sense, right? Definitely do that. Studied some famous fashion designers. Sure. Yeah, got to do that. Consulted with the curator of fashion and textiles at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. Yeah, well, if it's a big budget PTA movie, that's cool access.
And if you have access to that, go ahead.
And then apprenticed under Mark Happel, head of the costume department at the New York City Ballet, where he learned to sew and practiced on his wife, Rebecca, trying to recreate a Balenciaga sheath dress that was inspired by a school uniform. So
he's making dresses.
He didn't shoot the movie until he could make a dress from scratch. That's stupid. You don't.
That's dumb.
Didn't make the movie better.
That's dumb to me.
Dumb. It's dumb to me.
I mean, whatever. I mean, his performance is excellent.
You know what? The one way I'd accept it is if he said, "Oh, it doesn't make me better at acting. I just think it's fun to try a bunch of different shit."
That's all you need.
And I'd be like, that makes sense.
But he doesn't.
No, he says like, it improves his performance, which I just think is odd.
Which, you know,
Vicky Creeps.
I mean, like, if he was in the room, I bet he'd be like, "Yeah, man, I'm just a guy. But like, I'm just trying to do the thing."
But if you're in the room with him on set, then no, because that's his thing. Yeah, so Vicky Creeps was not allowed to meet him until set. He didn't want her to be at readings or rehearsals.
That's so weird.
Because he never wanted to see her out of character till the character is fully formed. He showed up. She was instructed to refer to him as Reynolds. He treated her like shit. I don't like that. Don't do that.
yeah, I'm with you there on that one. Yeah. But you know, like these are all adults. They're all agreeing to it, and he's a genius.
She's fine with it. So it didn't like traumatize her.
If everyone's fine with it, as long as everyone's fine. Yeah, as long as everyone's fine with it.
And then as I said, the names Reynolds Woodcock began as a joke. Sir Daniel Day-Lewis mentioned it to Paul Thomas Anderson, and it made Anderson laugh so hard he cried. Reynolds Woodcock. What a dork.
That's the other thing about. I mean, I've mentioned it before because P.T. Anderson came to school like to my school, and he talked, and we watched like it was a showing of Boogie Nights and Putney Swope, which is weird, but also awesome. That film's rules. But he something that I like was an unlock for me, and he also does it a lot in his interviews, is that he's like David Lyncher level troll. Like I don't necessarily think that he laughed until he cried.
Good.
Like I think I think he's honestly putting on airs for this film because this film is so like borderline pretentious. You know, I think he's doing that.
I believe
that's just me. I may be a fanboy and I think that the guy's a genius, but that may be true. You can still be an idiot and be a genius
at one thing. That's my point about Bobby Fischer. He is a genius at chess, but if you zoom out, you realize that hardly matters in life as the grand scope of things. Yeah.
And PTA is a huge nerd, but like the jokes he would make seem like they were being made for just him. You know,
him and Daniel Day-Lewis. Yeah.
Yeah. He honestly gives me like his weirdness factor is like, to me, is like Weird Al levels, like where it's like sometimes the joke is, oh, you're nailing it. You're doing the parody. And then you just did a joke for yourself. And it's weird and I don't get it. And I feel like P.T. Anderson isn't as funny, obviously, but he does that. His sense of humor is so like strange. Kind of also Andy Kaufman is someone that I would mention in that same kind of breath. Like it's so strange and so foreign and alien that I'm just like, you are like, I'm never gonna, you're just gonna embrace that and you're gonna be weird and you're gonna troll everyone because of that. And he clearly does that. He's talked about it all the time. And Fincher does it too. Fincher's the other guy who says like, he'll just agree to like the lowest hanging fruit, like interpretation of his movies. Like, yeah, that's why I made this movie. Fight Club is about like that. And it's like, no, clearly it's not. Like your movie goes out of its way to be like ambiguous about it. Why are you acting like it's just the simplest thing in the world? Yeah, because that's just how I see it. It's just like he's having fun, I think.
Yeah.
That's up to you. Read the interviews. Tell me what you think. I think P.T. Anderson is trolling sometimes.
I could buy it.
But also he could just be smelling his own farts at this point. I mean, he is seen as one of the greatest filmmakers on the planet. That's got to go to your head.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, this is not going to make you like the movie anymore. Did you hear about the Ellsworth PTA thing about this movie? So Inherent Vice was the last thing that we covered with P.T. Anderson, and Ellsworth, and who is the director of photography, has been for a long time, shot a lot of PTA's movies, was a guy who wasn't having a good time on that show. Apparently they clashed a lot, and Ellsworth was like, I think that might be the last one that we shoot together. I don't think PTA has said that such. In fact, when he was doing press for this movie, was like, yeah, I was thinking about using Ellsworth for this, but like he was busy shooting another thing. I think the Dan Gilroy movie with Denzel Washington, the lawyer one, I forget, Roman Esquire or something, I don't know. But P.T. Anderson this movie does not have a cinematographer. It doesn't have a director of photography. It's left out of the credits. And P.T. Anderson, some people thought that meant that P.T. Anderson was taking credit for it. So there was a whole like buzz around this movie.
I did see that he had to come out and say,
which is not,
he had to cinematograph.
Yeah.
It was a whole team of talented people.
Right. The quote is basically that he's like, no, I'm not the director of photography of the film. The situation was that I work with a group of guys in the last few films and smaller side projects. And in England, we were able to kind of work without an official director of photography. The people I would normally work with were unavailable, and it became a situation where we collaborated really in the best sense of the word as a team. I know how to point the camera in a good direction. I know a few things, but I'm not a director of photography. So that's good that he came out and said it, but it's interesting that like, it's very clear that a lot of people, like there's a camera operator, there's a gaffer, the guy who kind of controls the lights. There's keys, which is a generic term for a lot of different people in those departments who work on, the grip side, which is like the heavy, like lifting a lot of the stuff and, doing dolly and doing a lot of the supplements, a lot of the lights. So there's just this whole machine, right? And usually in terms of the hierarchy of a set, the director of photography is kind of in charge of that whole department as an umbrella, but those departments themselves have smaller departments. Like the gaffer takes care of the lighting. He's head of the lights. The grip is ahead of all of the grips situations. So he's like, we're just going to cut out that job, which is weird and is kind of like, some could argue, problematic just in the sense of there's a lot of great work by like Michael Bauman, who's the gaffer. It looks really good. He's not going to get, any credits for that. He's actually credited as a lighting cameraman, which is just, that's funny to me because I'm like, you just created a job that basically means director of photography. Why won't you just give him the job? But apparently he said in an interview, he would veto that decision. There was just too many other people in the mix. That's an interesting way to work. It works. It's just a strange way of doing it. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that because I just don't. I don't know these personal relationships. I don't know these professional relationships. Maybe everyone's happy with how that works, but it's just not typically how it was done. And I just wanted to kind of shine a light on what PTA said about it, because it can be definitely taken as it was, as, kind of a black mark on his, reputation. I don't think it's necessarily that, but it's also a very strange way of working. That's for sure.
I'm out.
I think I'm out as well, man.
That was the light at the end of the tunnel, I guess, then. What is next?
I'm shining lights left and right, baby.
On the next Andersons. Is it a Wes, or are we getting double finally?
Yeah, Phantom Thread is 2017. So the next movie you want to watch for next month is actually Wes Anderson, and it's Isle of Dogs, 2018.
I super want to see that. I never, ever have, and I know it's another stop motion.
Yeah, this, French Dispatch, and Asteroid City, I never got around to seeing because I was just after, I said it in the episode, after Moonrise Kingdom, I was like, right. I'm all set. This is great. This is great. I'm happy for you.
Asteroid City's exciting to me because it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen, and it will be fun to discuss.
Really funny to me. I can't wait for you to dunk.
What a waste of so many talented people and money. My God, nothing. It's nothing.
I don't know what they're making right now because I think both are working. I think actually Wes is going to do another one. I think he's just outpacing him. We have 4 more episodes of this show as of 2023, Asteroid City.
And then when they drop new stuff, we'll do probably bonus episodes and we'll keep it current. But otherwise, we'll be back to Kings of King.
But we have 4 left, and 3 of them are Wes. There's only Licorice Pizza left, which was 2021.
Yeah.
For PTA.
Sure. So join us for that.
Join us for that. Thanks for listening. Hope that was fun for y'all.
We love you.
This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The Beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the small beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you.